In the last two videos, we discussed the importance of truth and talked about the pillars supporting the LDS belief system. In order to fairly analyze the LDS Church and its claims, we need to find tools that are broad enough that they can be used to determine truth in most circumstances. One of the tricky things about truth is that we use our human brains to make judgments about whether something is true or not. If we don't understand the limits of our brain, then we may end up making poor judgments. For the sake of this video, I'm asking, do we filter reality?
When I was younger, I thought my mind had direct access to reality. However, as I matured, I started noticing some inconsistencies with this theory. I wondered, could it be that rational, sane people, like you and I, were filtering reality? Watch the following clip.
Ban, 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 ban.
If you're like most of us, your brain probably glitched out and you heard the word ban. Take a look.
Ban, 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 ban.
I find it interesting that the brain heard what it expected to hear, rather than what was actually said. Even more troubling is that none of us were trying to deceive ourselves. It was an unintentional, unconscious process.
When I decided that the LDS Church was true, I didn't know much about how the mind worked. For most of my life, I held fast to my LDS beliefs and actively defended the faith whenever and wherever I could. But life had a way of teaching me new truths. Here's my story. My journey began on a calm, peaceful night many years ago. I was driving down the highway with my youngest brother. I didn't know it would be one of the last times I would ever see him alive. He mentioned something significant that I failed to understand at the time. He leaned over and said, "I wish I was never born in the church." Puzzled, I asked, "Why?" He replied, "I would like to see how the church looks from the outside. How would it look? Would I notice anything different?" Those questions frightened me, so I fumbled around and gave a standard response about how lucky he was to be born into the church. At the time, I failed to recognize the depth and the courage of his question. It wasn't until a few years later, after Owen had died, that I began to glimpse the significance of what he meant. It happened when I was trying to reactivate my oldest brother, Dwayne. While I was trying to resolve his concerns, he asked me a simple question. Do you think it's possible that we unconsciously forget those moments in our lives that contradict our beliefs? This question caught me off guard. The more I tried to push his question out of my mind, the more I proved him right. I was trying to forget what he said in order to maintain my belief. This troubled me. I wanted to know, could it be true? Were we all filtering reality somehow in order to maintain our beliefs? It was like a light bulb came on in my head as I began to understand Owen's words for the first time. I would like to see how the church looks from the outside. How would it look? Would I notice anything different? Both of my brothers had independently discovered that there was some kind of filter or bias preventing us from seeing things clearly. As I pondered the implications of this bias, my mind became illuminated. I began to recall various memories that I had suppressed in order to maintain my beliefs. Specifically, I recalled a recent incident wherein some close family members had prayed for a miracle to save Owen's life. 3 or 4 of us independently received a revelation confirming that the desired miracle would take place. However, when the time came, it tragically failed to occur. I wondered if other family members had also suppressed this event, so I asked a close family member if she could remember the failed revelation. She could not. I was astounded. At the time, I didn't know that this phenomenon had been known and understood for thousands of years by philosophers. Scientists have been researching and documenting its effects for decades. It is called the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a tendency of people to favor information that confirms their beliefs or hypotheses. People display this bias when they gather or remember information selectively, or when they interpret it in a biased way. The effect is stronger for emotionally charged issues and for deeply entrenched beliefs. It is called the confirmation bias because research shows that most people prefer confirming their beliefs rather than proving them wrong. This is a form of selective thinking, which leads to statistical errors. For example, if Pat believes that during a full moon there is an increase in admissions to the emergency room where he works, he will tend to pay attention to the high admissions during a full moon, but pay less attention to the high admissions during other nights of the month. A tendency to do this over time unjustifiably strengthens his belief in the relationship between the full moon and the accidents. A much more serious case involving confirmation bias occurred during the Mayfield fingerprint error. On March 11, 2004, a bomb exploded on a train in Madrid, killing 191 people and injuring thousands of others. A latent fingerprint was recovered from the crime scene and searched in the FBI's database of over 500 million known fingerprints. One of the 20 possible matches was Brandon Mayfield, an Oregon attorney who had converted to Islam and defended Muslim suspects. A first FBI expert declared that Mayfield's fingerprints matched the partial. A second and then third FBI expert verified the match. The FBI called it an absolutely incontrovertible match, and Mayfield was subsequently taken into police custody. Next, an independent defense fingerprint expert also verified the FBI's match. However, the match proved to be an error when Spanish police subsequently identified the real bomber. How did all four experts make the same mistake? Well, when the first investigator decided it was a match, he had unknowingly influenced the other investigators' minds. Once influenced, they had unconsciously decided that Mayfield was guilty. So when they examined the prints, they could only see similarities rather than any differences. They were seeking for facts to fit their theory, rather than seeking a theory that fit all the facts. As I learned more about the confirmation bias, I realized that it was only the tip of the iceberg. It was just one of many cognitive biases that prevented people from finding the truth. It led to irrational thinking in all areas of life, costing governments, corporations, and individuals billions of dollars in mistakes each year. I fasted and prayed as I thought about my brother Dwayne. I knew that the confirmation bias affected us both. I felt that God was trying to teach me these vital truths so that I could reach my brother and bring him back into the fold. I knew that if I wanted to take truth seriously, I needed to find a way to overcome the confirmation bias. How could I find the truth without doing so? I learned that being aware of the confirmation bias helped reduce its effects, but not entirely. I also found that experts in many fields had to deal with the confirmation bias on a daily basis, and they developed methods of working around it. For example, many expert investors try to adopt a contrary viewpoint for the sake of argument. They imagine that their investments have collapsed and ask themselves why this might happen. In a similar way, I decided to build up a contrary viewpoint, or an alternate hypothesis, to see how it compared to my cherished LDS model. I wasn't afraid of what I might find, because I felt secure in my beliefs, and had a strong desire to find truth, no matter the consequences. For starters, I put the confirmation bias idea in the opposing model, because I don't remember the LDS Church ever teaching it to me, and I felt it was a vital part of finding the truth. In the following videos, we will be building up both of these two opposing models as critically and persuasively as possible. I will need your participation to keep this as unbiased as possible. As always, I'm willing to change my mind if I am wrong. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to your comments.